messages, right? Doesn't work that way. Either you're going to be able to deliver and define what my expectations should be, or you're going to be facing people constantly throwing back stories like, cloud isn't ready, cloud isn't ready. Well, I only have a short time, so I wasn't able to talk about some really, really nasty things like certificate issues, identity access management, SOA web services, storage security, encryption, interoperability, portability, vendor lock-in, all of these things, huge topics unto themselves, right? Because for the most part, people forget about this stuff. It's hidden, it's obfuscated, it's abstracted. And the sad part is that we're so focused on the shiny new bits that people are wrapped up in the newest, latest exploits, many of which I've brought to bear here, which are kind of common extrapolations of existing technology, existing operations, existing exploits, but are just spun a little differently. The reality is we need to fix the things that we haven't fixed already, that we know about, that we actually know how to fix. I often ask, where is the threat modeling? Where's the risk analysis? Where's the stuff that you would do pragmatically when you go to cloud? People are essentially looking and making decisions based on cost alone, or agility and flexibility, not understanding what that means. So if we look at a summarization of some of the stuff I talked about here, a lot of this stuff, not new at all, right? Operationally, it's going to have profound impacts on what cloud delivers to us over time. So when we look at what solutions we have today, we're pretty much at the mercy of what cloud providers build into a lot of their fabrics of service offerings. In some cases, if you're virtualized, you get to deploy virtual appliances, you get to leverage APIs at the hypervisor layer maybe, you get to exploit your ISV communities, maybe you leverage trusted computing-based solutions as they become more available, as the hardware is upgraded and can take advantage of it. But the reality is these are new solutions to old problems that we still haven't fixed. To be fair, there are a lot of good things that come out. Cloud and virtualization are great forcing functions. They are causing people that wouldn't ordinarily think about security to say, wait a second, what does this mean to me? Sometimes nothing, sometimes everything. The reality is really bad things will happen, but really good people are starting to pay attention, and we're getting eyeballs on these problems. You'll find that a lot of what we have today already works in the cloud, but operationally, we may have to give up some of that control and think about what we do and how we do it differently. And that, I think, is the challenge. So when we look at what we are doing, the infrastructure layer, we have all these converged compute, network, and storage capabilities which allow us to kind of better focus and concentrate our security efforts, which is useful, but adds some complexity. The virtualization platforms are evolving, as are next generation networking at the IP layer with our service providers, which are giving us better visibility, better insight, better resilience in some cases, so long as nobody steals your servers and breaks into your NOC. At the metastructure layer, we're still kind of crippled. We're looking at some extensions to amend the protocols that we currently use. So we have things like DNSSEC, BGP extensions with authentication, IPv6, new protocols like Lisp separating the routing from location, APIs and interfaces that are being built into cloud services. But for the most part, we're kind of polishing a turtle. And then ultimately the infrastructure layer, we still have buffer overflows. This is just maddening, right? I could stop there, but the reality is we're depending upon, in many cases, services that are browser-based. The browser battle, as we've heard for a lot of the presentations of the last 2 days, is lost in many cases. It's very difficult for a user to know what's good, what's bad. So a certain amount of intelligence needs to be built into the infrastructure to help make those decisions if users can't be trusted to make them themselves. We're also applying this kind of layer 1 through 6 solutions to layer 7 and 8 problems, which historically is not shown as being very useful. And the infrastructure layer is still completely and totally disconnected from the infrastructure and metastructure layers, which again, looking at the evolution of how the SPI models are evolving, Platform as a service has a unique capability in some cases to solve problems that the other two offerings can't. Because we have hooks into a developmental framework that allows me to implement controls in a more focused way that kind of unifies the infrastructure, the infrastructure with the metastructure and infrastructure layers, it's a unique situation. But when people ask, what do I do as a security professional, as a provider at any level to get a handle on what this means, you should check out the Cloud Security Alliance guidance. So full disclaimer, I'm one of the founding members. I'm also the technical advisor for the CSA. We have vendors, we have end users, we have government organizations. It's all volunteer effort. We put out a 83-page white paper on guidance in 3 domains: architecture and framework, governance, and operating the cloud, that talk about the impacts of what cloud computing means across all these different 15 domains. And the version 2 guidance will be coming out in about the next month or so. We have lots of ties with regulatory compliance and other organizations that are giving really valuable feedback in ways that are letting people understand at a less technical level all the turtles I just kind of talked to you about. So, ultimately, in closing, we created this mess. It is really our responsibility to help clean it up. Cloud providers especially have an opportunity to make things better in ways, given the centralization, given what they're able to do in terms of service delivery, that we haven't been able to do before. So in wrapping up, the reality is the attacks ultimately on cloud infrastructure, as well as people using cloud services for evil, is already here today. Let's not fool ourselves. It's a brilliant platform that makes lazy people even lazier. Hybrid security solutions are needed to bridge this gap between the physical and the virtual. Ultimately, what that means is we've got to challenge service transparency. We need the capability as a customer and as a provider to automate a lot of that visibility and gain some of that back. So, for example, I've been working with a team that is building something called the A6 API. Which is audit assurance attestation API, if I left out a word. But the point here is to build a standardized way of including APIs in all levels of the SPI frameworks that allow the providers to automate the capabilities to do security things that they don't do today, as well as allow consumers to automate that process to get the visibility back in an abstracted infrastructure. So this is a huge piece, and all of the stuff like the OCCI, the Open Group Framework, all of these open cloud standards that are working now with vCloud, for example, in the DNTF, are ways of trying to make sure that we gain back this visibility as the abstraction continues. So providers, you have the chance to really make a difference. And I count Microsoft as a provider. It is really, really important that besides operating systems at the consumer level that run on machines and at the server level, that as services are brought to bear, like Azure, that things are thought about differently in a way that allows trust, transparency, and visibility to continue to make headway rather than to get surrendered. It's kind of this subpar effort, right, where good enough is good enough. So if it comes down to trust, ultimately, what are we going to do differently about who we trust, how we trust, and why. So hopefully I've given you enough to chew on, enough to think about in terms of these turtles, about how all of these services are interrelated and how cloud as an operational model adds wonderful benefits and capabilities, but does not lessen our need to solve these problems. So I'll be around for the rest of the day. My contact info is on the screen. I got my work address, Twitter. I have my own dedicated set of servers that essentially process my never-ending stream of tweets. Phone numbers there for you, email, and my blog, which I write a tremendous amount on in terms of cloud security. So thank you very, very much for suffering through this. And Billy Rios and Nate will be giving another great presentation, as will Robert from Salesforce. But thanks very much for your time.